already did buckling in the last class. I slightly quickly revise it. So you can also analyze buckling the way I am doing here. There is a rigid bar. Hello. So can you talk to me after 2 hours? So we assume a rigid bar. It is hinged here, and we are applying a load here, a compressive load, and there is a spring attached. So as we apply the load, the bar can swing either way. So the way it has assumed is it is turning clockwise. So there will be some energy stored in the spring where it turns like this. So if we draw free body diagram of this bar, then you see there is a vertical force P and the spring is getting compressed. So there is a force pushing the bar in this direction. This is the way your spring is looking like. And what is the compression of the spring? This is theta, and the distance moved will be L theta at the location of the spring. So this is the KL theta is the force coming to the spring, compressing it. So Newton's third law says that the force applied by the spring on the bar will be in this direction as shown. Now energy is stored in the spring due to deflection. You can say that its energy is this half K into whatever is the compression square. So work done by force P. As force P is applied, there is some work done by the force P. So because there is a downward displacement of the bar, as the bar rotates, you see, the force P moves some distance downwards because this is a diagonal and diagonal will be smaller. Diagonal will be, the length is same as because it is a rigid bar. So it automatically takes a lower vertical position compared to the initial position of the force P. So this L minus L cos theta, if you just take the current position of the y of the x coordinate, it will be L cos theta, and initial position was L. So P into L minus L cos theta is the work done by the force. So if you take it as a gradually applied force, it should have been half. So if you just expand cos theta around theta is equal to 0, you get 1 minus theta square by 2. This is just by Taylor series. I think I have done it before. So you get the work done by force P as half PL theta square. For critical load P, you see you are applying load, your external force is doing work, and also some energy is getting stored in the spring. Suppose work done by the force P is greater than or equal to the energy absorbed by the spring, then you will have a buckling situation. More work is being done than can be absorbed by the elastic energy. So we are taking the limiting situation when you equate the two, and this is what you get. So critical load becomes K into L, where K is the stiffness of the bar or spring. You have assumed all the stiffness of the bar in the spring. K shown here. So you have a bar which has some stiffness, and you are assuming the bar as rigid, and the entire stiffness is in this spring K. So this is some kind of a bending stiffness. You see, as the bar swings left or right. So there is some resistance that involves some bending deformation. So, so cantilever tries to, or this beam tries to reduce that deformation, and that is bending stiffness. And that bending stiffness here has been modeled as a spring K. Another way you can analyze it is you find equation of motion for the rigid bar. So if you take movement about point O, you take movement about point O. So there is a force P which is causing a clockwise movement about point O, and there is a force KL theta which is causing a counterclockwise movement about point O. And this will be equal to I theta double dot. So you see there is a clockwise movement, there is a counterclockwise movement, and sum of the two will be equal to I naught alpha. If you write it like this, take it to this side, so you get this equation. So this is an equation of the kind you have seen in vibrations. Mx double dot plus kx equal to 0 or f. So such an equation has a solution, a harmonic solution. So theta double dot plus this. So you can see there is a theta here, theta double dot here. Something similar to this equation. What is the angular frequency here? Root k by m. This was a natural frequency you must have studied earlier. So theta double dot is this. So how do you get your stiffness? So here you can write it as theta double dot plus this. So you can get an expression of natural frequency. So what is seen here? Can you see in this term, this minus P plus KL, this is acting like a stiffness. If this term becomes zero, your system will have zero stiffness. What happens if there is zero stiffness? Then body is not resisting deformation. It is the stiffness which makes you resist deformation. And you have large displacements, large theta. So as P increase becomes more than this stiffness, what you will get? Your stiffness will become negative. So when you have negative stiffness, you get infinite displacements. You see here, what happens if you have negative stiffness? You see what is the solution? X is equal to A iota omega t plus B minus E iota omega t. If your omega becomes complex, negative stiffness is what? Complex omega. So your omega is complex. So 2 in complex omega into I number. So you get something called some CT. So you have a real number here instead of an imaginary number. Once you have a real number here, then you see as time grows, your solution will grow. So you don't want a growing solution. Okay, this has an exponential growth. Only iota is making it bounded. So when your stiffness is negative, your solution blows up. So you don't like that. So stiffness of the system becomes zero when P critical is equal to K load. So as P becomes more than P critical, stiffness becomes negative. Critical load that causes instability is KL, where your stiffness is zero. So that is the case of critical load. And this is also called buckling load. This is the way Euler analyzed buckling problem. This, this was already done. So I am not doing it again. So I had found that y is equal to delta into 1 minus cos kx. You see, this was one case. You see, we had found KL is equal to 2n minus 1 pi by 2. So you have got this kind of a situation. So either cos KL is equal to cos, suppose cos KL is 1, then you get a 0 here, or delta is equal to 0. If there is delta is equal to 0, it's a no buckling situation. So that is not important for us. That is a trivial situation. So you are looking for cos KL being 1, and you get KL is equal to this. And K is coming like n pi by 2l. So when n is equal to 1, you have got minimum load, that is a buckling load. When n is equal to 2, you see you will have your bending deformation will look like this. So somewhere here you are constraining your column. If you go for L is equal to 2, n is equal to 2, you have got this situation. So I have plotted different situations. And you can achieve higher buckling load only by constraining the column. So you see you have constrained the column here by making deformation, your deflection go to 0 here. So this was pin column situation, and this was a case of fixed free column. So this already we have done. Another situation where n is equal to 1. This is pin column. Two ends are having pin constraints. So you're not allowing the column to deflect at these 2 points. Suppose we put one more constant in the middle. You get n is equal to 2, n is equal to 3. So you are enforcing that deflection is 0 here. So when you do that, you can achieve higher buckling loads. So you are making n is equal to 1, 2, 3. So if a bar has both ends built in means you have fixed ends at both the ends. There are movements exerted by the support that prevent the ends of column from rotating during buckling. So here you see this kind of a deformation. Here there is no rotation of the cross-sectional plane. Similarly, here there is no rotation of the cross-sectional plane. These end movements, so there are end movements exerted by the support, and the axial compressive force are equivalent to force P applied eccentrically. So you see, you assume a force axially initially because supports are also applying a moment. The actual force can be taken as an eccentric force. We had seen earlier an eccentric force can be seen as an axial force and a movement. So you can use that theory where you had an eccentrically applied load. So in this situation, inflection point and midpoint of column divide the bar into four equal regions of the type seen in fixed free column. You see, this is one fixed free type of stuff. This is another fixed free kind of deformation. This is another fixed free kind of deformation. This is another fixed free kind of deformation. So this is fixed, this is free. So you can put L equivalent as L by 4. And you can get a P critical. You see now P critical is higher. In pi square EI by L square was the case when you had a pin end conditions. So now you're getting 4 times. Now for pin column, you had seen this condition, this equation. Now this I you can define as A r square, where A is the cross-sectional area and R is the radius of gyration. So you just write P critical is equal to A r square. Now you take this A to the left hand side. You get this equation. P critical by A is this. Pi square E, and this you write as L by R square. L by R is the slenderness ratio. R is the radius of gyration of the cross section. If rod is thinner, column is thinner, R will be small. And for the same L by R, for the same length, you have large L by R ratio. So this ratio is also called slenderness ratio. You can plot P critical by A and L by R. So you see, you will get a curve of this kind. So you get a curve of this kind. And you can see P critical by A looks like stress. So if you equate it to yield stress, for example, for mild steel, your Young's modulus is this, yield stress is this. So in P critical by A, you replace by yield stress. So you get pi square Young's modulus upon L by R square. So you see L by R is coming equal to 100. So when your L by R is 100, your column is also failing by yielding. So your elastic, your Euler buckling formula is valid when your slenderness ratio is more than 100. So if you keep increasing your load, then you will go into inelastic buckling. And this expression you have tried will not be valid for inelastic buckling. Already your material is failing by plastic deformation. So your formula is good when your L by R is more than 100. So you can define buckling load when your column is longer than when slenderness ratio is more than 100. So equation 1 is represented by the curve above this equation. The curve is asymptotic to x-axis and y-axis also. You will find that this curve will be asymptotic, tangential to x-axis as well as y-axis. But the curve over y-axis or elastic limit is not valid for the analysis done. Material is assumed to be elastic while driving expression for buckling load. For mild steel, buckling load is correct for slenderness ratio greater than or equal to 100. For lower slenderness ratio, compressive stress reaches elastic limit before buckling can occur, and above formula cannot be used. I hope it is clear. One more thing is there. Now you have a column. You are applying a load. Now this column has a cross section. So you see suppose you call it B and H. Now if B is greater than H, sorry, okay. B is less than H as it is looking. How will the column buckle? That is a question. Now what we are saying is suppose this is your H, this is your B. Now how can this column buckle? Anybody? Yes. Dhruv, can you answer something?
Sorry, sir.
In what way it will deform when it buckles? Will it go like this? Or it can also go like this. You see, it can buckle in two different planes. One plane it is buckling is like this. It is going in this direction. Another it can buckle in this plane. But you cannot say that it will go only like this. It can also go in the other direction. Deflection can be in this direction. Deflection can be in this direction. In which direction you think it will buckle? So it will buckle in the direction where it has less stiffness. Because P critical will be easily reached there. P critical is, so this is your formula for P critical. If your EI is less, so your P critical will be less. So buckling will be in that direction. So where your I will be less. So I is given by BH square by 12. BH cube by 12. So this is your I, BH cube by 12. If your D is large, sorry, here your H is large. Okay. Let's do it. So you have got Y and Z axis. What is your IZZ? Let's call it, okay, let's call it B and H. What is your IZZ, Dhruv? Yes. Kavalish. What is your IZZ?
Sir, here, 1 second, sir. BH cube by 12.
Okay. And what is your IYY? Is it all right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Now, which is higher? Suppose your B is larger. Which is higher? IY is higher than IZZ?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So, how will your bending will be preferred? How will buckling will be preferred?
In the IZZ direction because pre-critical is less.
So, buckling will happen in such a way that IZZ is involved. Okay. How will IZZ be involved? So, let's, now I have drawn it like this. So, which IZ, which is higher? So, this is higher. If this direction is your ZZ, then this will be higher than the other one. Can you see that IZZ will be higher than IYY in this diagram? Kavalish.
Yes, yes, sir. Because here the thing is.
You see, larger area is having greater distance from ZZ.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Exactly.
More area is closer to YY. So IZZ is higher. Then how it should bend?
Sir, here then IYY must be involved because EI must be less in
Okay,
case.
okay, okay, okay. You are right. So IYY will be involved. How will that be involved? How it should bend for that?
Uh,
So
I
your
mean, sir, yes, sir. Like
so it should go like this.
yes, sir. Like it should be bending about the wire.
IYY will be involved when you see here you are having tension and here you are having compression. Then your IYY is involved. if your IZZ was involved, what would have happened? You would have had tension, suppose here, compression here.
Yes, sir. Now it's clear.
So in that case, what is happening? Your column would have gone something like this. It would have gone in that direction. You get it?
Yes, sir. Now it's clear.
So at least this diagram is clear that as you go like this part is in tension, this is in compression, and you will involve your IYY. Your IYY calculation will be involved in the formula. Okay. So I think I have rounded off buckling. Now I will go to the other part. I have not talked about Mohr circle till now. So I'm going to talk about the Mohr circle, and you listen to it patiently as such recording is being made. So Mohr circle is a very important topic. I have already told you this formula, sigma PQ is equal to LPI LQJ. So this is a very general formula for 3D problems. So L is here direction cosine. So this you have been already taught. So I will not get into again. So you look at the simple problem I will do now for plane stress problem. For plane stress, your life is easier. So what is happening in plane stress? We define a coordinate system first. So this is your sigma xx. This is your sigma yy. So this stress is your sigma yx. So this stress is your sigma xy. So this is your sigma yx. Hello. Yes, good morning. No, no, thank you. Okay, so I have shown you an element and I have shown you the stresses on that element. So now I will show you a Mohr circle. How do I draw Mohr circle for this? So what is done in Mohr circle is you identify two faces. Here you are given stress information on two planes. So what are those two planes? Stress information is there. Kevalish.
Sir, on the XY plane, it's the information is given.
One is on this plane,
Yes, sir.
one is on this plane.
Yes, sir.
So what is this plane you will call? What is the name of this plane? Look, this plane has normal vector in x direction. So this is your YZ plane. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And here you have got stress information with normal vector in y direction. So this is your XZ plane.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is the stress information on this plane you are having? Normal stress and shear stress. So you will say sigma xx, sigma yx. This is your one plane. What is your second plane? Sigma yy, sigma xy. Now you see, there is a concept of complementary shear stress. Complementary shear stresses are equal. Here, if you do force balance of this, if you do force balance, then what will happen? Suppose this is sigma xx, this is sigma yy. So sigma xx is balance out sigma xx, sigma yy will balance out sigma yy. Sigma xy here is balancing out sigma xy. Sigma yx is balancing out sigma yx. Opposite faces. So if you just, what is the stress force because of this? Sigma xx into dy dz. dy dz is the area of this face, right face. So dz is the thickness in the depth direction. So you got an element dx dy dz. That is the sides of the element. So this becomes the force on the right face. So this is in I direction. Similarly, force on the left face is in direction minus I. So that is sigma xx dy dz I. So you'll see that they are cancelling out and you are getting just a zero. Same thing will happen with other stresses. Now, if you find movement, how you find movement? You find sigma mz. What is the overall movement? You see sigma xx, you are assuming a uniformly distributed stress on these faces. So equivalent force you can say is as passing through the centroid of the face. So all of these forces are passing through. You can assume at the center point of this, you call it O. So they will cause zero movement. All these normal stresses are causing zero movement about the set origin O. So what is the movement caused by sigma xy? This is you calling sigma xy on opposite faces. So what is the movement Kavalish by this sigma xy?
So dx by 2 multiplied by the force.
Okay, what is the force here? Sigma xy is causing what force?
So sigma xy multiplied by the area.
So this is the area of the face,
Yes, sir.
dx dz.
Yes,
What
sir.
is the
Yes.
distance between the two forces?
dx by 2. Dx by 2.
Okay, so this is dy by this distance is dy. So dy is the distance between these two forces on these faces. So this is the movement caused by these forces, what I have written. And this is a clockwise movement. So you have to put a minus sign. Similarly, you look at this movement caused by sigma yx. So what is the movement caused by this? Counterclockwise. So you use a plus sign. What is the force on this face? dy, dz. And what is the distance between these two tangential forces?
dx.
Dx. So this becomes the movement. And all these movements are about z-axis. So this is causing a counterclockwise turning about z-axis. This is causing a clockwise turning about z-axis. So if you want moment equilibrium, this should be zero. So you see sigma xy is equal to sigma yx. So these stresses are called complementary shear stresses. They have to be equal. Only then you have moment equilibrium. So moment equilibrium is what makes the stress tensor symmetric. Sigma xy is equal to sigma yx, and you will find sigma xz is equal to sigma zx. Sigma yz is equal to sigma zy. All right, you could have also used tau. Not an issue. Okay. Now you see these two stresses, they are causing a clockwise twist to the element. So they are causing a clockwise twist, and these two fellows, they are causing a counterclockwise twist. Now you see clockwise twist in our coordinate system is negative. Counterclockwise twist is positive in static sign convention for this coordinate system. Okay. Now what is done in using Mohr circle? Clockwise twist is called positive and counterclockwise twist, sorry, sigma yx was counterclockwise. So this is called negative, and this sigma xy which is causing clockwise twist, it is called positive. So this is for Mohr circle. Kevalish, do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So I have called the shear stress on this phase as positive. It is a clockwise twist, and counterclockwise twist I have called negative. So this is happening opposite to what was your static sign convention. Mohr circle is a geometrical trick. So there is no physics involved in it. It is used to satisfy stress transformation rules. There are stress transformation rules which I had written you here. If you follow what the way I am drawing Mohr circle, whatever results you will get will be seen to obey your stress transformation rules. So it is just a trick to get the right answers. If you don't follow that procedure, you will not get the right answers. That's all. So you can't see logic here. Now what is done is these are the 2 points. This axis you call normal stress axis. This you call shear stress axis. So this is your normal stress. So you define two different axes, shear stress. You see there is a positive axis, positive stress, shear stress, negative shear stress. Now here when you had talked sigma xy is equal to sigma yx, now both the stresses are positive. All stresses are having same sign. You already know stress sign convention for stresses. Negative force, negative area, positive stress. So that is a separate thing. For Mohr circle, you redefine your sign convention. Whatever stress which is causing counterclockwise twist, so this is causing a counterclockwise twist to the element. That will be called negative, and this is causing a clockwise twist, it will be called positive. Because you have a positive as well as negative direction here. And same thing with normal stress. You see tensile stresses are positive, compressive stresses are negative. So there we are not changing the sign convention. That is as before. Now here you see sigma xx, and you are having a negative value. So here you are sigma xx, and you will go downwards. So this point becomes sigma xx, sigma yx. Okay, you can put a negative here. And then you have a point sigma yy, sigma xy. Okay, any problem? So we have got 2 points. So if this is plane 1, this is plane 2. So here you are having plane 1, you are having plane 2. So these 2 points which you have plotted represent normal and shear stresses on two planes. Kevalish, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So I've just plotted 2 points on a piece of paper where my coordinate axes are normal stress and shear stress. Now I can join these 2 points. So what is the midpoint? Can you calculate the midpoint, Kevalish?
Yes, sir. Sigma yy plus sigma xx by 2, and in the same way of the y coordinate also.
So will that y coordinate be 0?
Yes, sir. It will be 0 because
Because these are having equal magnitude. So
yes, sir.
this distance and this distance is same. Okay. So Now with this as the center and this as the radius, you can draw a circle. This circle is called Mohr circle. Any problem? So you have just learned to drive Mohr circle. Can you find radius of this circle? What is radius of this circle? Okay. So, okay. You know this, you know this distance. Vertical distance is sigma xy. And this distance you need to know. What is this total distance? Sigma xx minus sigma yy. Can you see this?
Yes, sir.
So sigma xx minus sigma yy by 2 square. So that becomes your radius square. Is it all right? Kevalish.
Yes, sir. It's
It
okay.
is a diagonal, it is Pythagoras theorem. Can you find the values of these 2 points? So let's call this point as A, this point as B. Can you find sigma B?
Yes, sir. We can.
Okay. So higher value is called principal stress, maximum principal stress. So what is the maximum principal stress? Sigma xx plus sigma yy by 2 plus this radius, what you had calculated? All right. This is your higher value. And what is your lower value? What is the minimum principal stress? You put a minus sign. Rest is same. So what is the typical feature of this maximum principal value? Shear stress is 0 here. Can you see this? Kevalish.
Yes, sir.
So shear stress is 0. And you see these points 1 and 2, these two planes were represented by these 2 points. So each point on Mohr circle represents a plane. That is the main thing. Each point on Mohr circle represents normal and shear stress on a plane. Okay. You see, we did this problem. Then we said we want to find stresses on this point. Then we said we can say they just we can find stresses sigma yy. Sigma yy we said was equal to P by A. This is what we said. And we said that sigma xx is 0, sigma xy is 0. All that we had done earlier. So I cannot do everything again and again. Time is short. So these were the stress tensor. Now you see there are different planes passing through this point. So plane AB, what is the normal vector to the plane AB? X. So this was the information. What was this? Sigma xx, sigma yx, sigma zx. So first column represented stresses on plane having normal vector in x direction. Similarly, plane this CD plane. So this was having stresses on this plane were represented by second column. Similarly, you have got a plane having normal vector in z direction that is represented by third column. You can pass infinite number of planes through this point. So if you draw more circle for this case, so what is the information you are having on this plane? On this plane, what are your stresses? 0, 0. Both the stresses are 0, normal as well as shear. And on this plane, what are the stresses? P by A and 0. So these are the two. At this plane, you have information on these two planes. So one point is 0, 0. Other point is P by A 0. So with these 2 points as diameter, you draw a circle. So this is a Mohr circle. Earlier, what you had done? With these 2 points as diameter, with these 2 points you join and treat it as a diameter, you draw a circle. Same thing I am doing here now. Kevalish, any problem with this?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, this is a point where you have got maximum shear stress. Can you see this? This is a maximum shear stress point. I think I had done already all this, that as you keep changing the plane, it will have some normal and shear stress. Like, right, suppose you draw. So this is a plane passing through this point. So you have an external force P here. So a force P has to be there to balance it. On this phase, you are having forces. Net effect of those forces has to balance it out. It has to be equal and opposite. So you see this force, you can say, resolve into two components, a normal component and a tangential component to this phase. So this will cause normal stress. This will cause shear stress on this plane. And I had told you earlier that it is the normal and shear stresses which are important because they cause failure. Your material can be weaker in shear, then shear stress becomes important. If your material is weaker in tension or compression, your normal stress becomes important. So you need to know the distribution. So what is done is, what is the maximum shear stress plane? Probably you know that when theta is equal to 45 degrees, you have maximum shear stress. Now, what is done is, here you are seeing your angle is 90 degree in Mohr circle. While we know that theta is equal to 45-degree plane has maximum shear stress. So you see now, this is my plane. So this normal vector represents this plane. Normal stress is P by A, shear stress is 0 on this plane. And what is this plane? Normal stress is 0. Sorry. Here, this was the plane where normal stress and shear stress were 0. Okay. Now, this is the plane on which normal stress is P by A and shear stress is 0. This is the plane. So you see, from this plane, I went to this plane. So how did I rotate? I went 90-degree counterclockwise. Is it all right?
Yes,
K1.
sir.
So how do I reach this plane in more circle? In more circle, you have to turn twice the angle. In physical plane, in physical world. So what was the angle you turned in physical world? 90 degrees to reach. So you turned 90 degree to reach that plane. Now here we have to turn 90 degree from here, twice the angle. So I go from here. This was the plane. So with this as the center, you rotate your ray twice, 180 degrees, and you reach this point. So this point goes to this point. Can you see this? And we got the this plane. We went counterclockwise 90 degree here. So here we also went counterclockwise 180 degree. Suppose I want to see this plane. So I'll have to go clockwise 90 degrees. So here you go clockwise 180 degrees. Any problem?
Sir, this rotation thing, like if we rotate clockwise in the physical world, in Mohr circle, it gets rotated anti-clockwise.
No, no, it will rotate the same direction, same sense
Okay.
of rotation,
Okay, sir.
but double the angle.
Okay.
So it's all a geometrical stuff. This is what is seen in geometry. You get the same results. So now if I want to go 45 degree in the actual world, I have gone 45 degree. You see, I am here, 0, 0. I go 45 degree. All right. So I am going 45 degree counterclockwise. Then I am reaching this plane. Okay, one more thing. You have to see the normal vector rotation. Maybe I might have messed up. You see here, you have to see the normal vector rotation. Now suppose I am going here. So this is my normal vector to the plane. So my plane is this. Initially I was in this plane. Normal vector was this. So now I am in this plane. So normal vector is this. So I am talking of this plane. So in this plane I have turned counterclockwise. Okay. So I am turning counterclockwise 45 degree. So from here I have to turn counterclockwise 90 degrees. So I am reaching this point. Let's call this point as Q. So this is representing plane Q. All right.
Yes, sir.
Now suppose I want to see this plane. So this plane normal vector is in this direction. Let's call this plane as S. So you have to turn clockwise 45 degrees from this plane. So you have to turn clockwise 45 degree. So 90 degree in this direction. So this becomes your S. Now you see, here shear stress is positive, here shear stress is negative. So what does it mean? Shear stress here should be doing clockwise twisting. And here it is negative, it means it should be doing counterclockwise twisting. Now we'll see, is this happening? Now first I will take this plane Q. So you see, I have to draw a free body diagram like this. Only then you can see what is happening to the plane Q. body P is like this. So actual force has to be like this. Now this is the force. So you take the components. These are tangential and normal components. So you see, this stress is what kind of twisting it is doing to the body. Counterclockwise, is it not? So you see, your Q plane is doing counterclockwise twisting. Had you gone for S plane was this. This was your S plane, normal vector in this direction. Your external force is on this face. So this has to be created by the same force. But now you have to draw normal and tangential component of this force. So how is it twisting this alley body? It is twisting it clockwise. You see, this force is causing a clockwise twist on your this body. So you see here. Hello. Yes. अच्छा तो मुझे 1 बजे कॉल करोगे कॉल मी एट 1 ओके ओके इज इट ऑल राइट केवलिश
Yes, sir.
okay so you can always reconcile physically what you are getting whether it is matching the actual situation about cancelling the movements or equilibrium is being satisfied. So now we'll do a more general thing. So this is that 1D case, uniaxial load problem. So we had these two. So this point represented this plane. Now we suppose want to find stress information on this plane. Now this is some plane having some arbitrary angle. Now you see normal vector to this plane is this. So your normal vector rotates by angle theta. Can you see this?
Yes, sir.
So rotation of normal angle is what? What is the sense of rotation? Counterclockwise.
Anti-clockwise.
Now this is my plane 0, 0, corresponding to this x-axis, where you have got both stresses are 0. All right. So this plane is uniquely identified without any ambiguity. Now, what I say, you have to turn to find this plane RR. You have to turn counterclockwise theta. So it means from here you have to turn counterclockwise by an angle 2 theta. So this will give you normal stress and shear stress. So this is your normal stress value. And this is your shear stress value. Any problem? So you have found using Mohr circle normal and shear stresses on this plane. Take any plane. Suppose you had gone, instead of going like this, you had gone like this. This is a normal vector. You had gone like this. So you have gone now 2 pi minus theta. 2 pi minus theta, you went clockwise. So how much you will go there? 2 into 2 pi minus theta. So what it will be? 4 pi minus 2 theta. Now, if this is 2 theta, what is this angle? You're turning clockwise. 2 pi minus 2 theta. So this angle is 2 pi minus 2 theta. So if you are going 4 pi minus 2 theta, you are just going full circle again. So it depends how you are going by, the way you will go around. If you are going counterclockwise or clockwise, it will not make any change. Your results will be same. One more way we can do it. So why should I choose only? I could have chosen this point, and I wanted to reach RR. Same plane. Now you see this plane is making an angle theta degree with this axis. So what is the? So I am here. So I have to turn to reach this. This was my normal vector. Now my normal vector is turning clockwise. How much it is turning average clockwise?
Pi by 2 minus theta.
Very good. So I am here. I have to turn double the angle clockwise. So I have to turn 180 minus 2 theta. So if this angle is 2 theta, then this is 180 minus 2 theta. Is it all right? And I have to turn clockwise because you see this this was the normal vector. Your normal vector turned clockwise 90 minus theta. So I have to turn clockwise only. And all the turning rotation is from the center of the circle. Your ray is centered at the center of the circle and rotates. Your axis of rotation of the ray is at the center of the circle. At times people start rotating from here or here. Then they are making a mess. So you see this is going to give you sigma and tau. You see same thing happened here. I was having sigma and tau by the 2 theta. Can you see that you are getting same results? Whether
Yes.
you start from this plane or this plane. All right. So Mohr circle is used to do plane stress situations. For 3D stress situations, Mohr circle is not effective. Whole thing is happening very fast somehow. You will find these two stresses are pointing towards each other. You see, this is opposite to this is opposite to this. Once you decide these, suppose you apply one shear stress, then other has to equilibrate, it has to be in opposite direction for force balance. Now it is making a couple. Now it is turning it clockwise. Now you have to introduce a counterclockwise couple. So naturally, this is the only way you can do it. So you will find that two shear stresses are pointing towards each other or they are going away from each other. Okay. So you will see that this is causing these two fellows are, this end is getting pushed in. This end is getting pushed out. So this is the way you will find deformation happening. So I will do a case of pure shear. What is pure shear? You're not having normal stresses on the element. This you call pure shear. You will see such situation in torsion. When you are having pure torsion of a rod, you have done it. So this is the kind of a situation you have. How do you handle pure torsion? Now this is you see is you call it tau. So this is a counterclockwise twist. So how what is it will be shown? 0 minus tau. This is a clockwise twist. So you have got two. This point is 0 tau. This point is 0 minus tau. So for pure torsion, for the case of pure shear, your Mohr circle is like this. Okay. I think I made a mistake. 0 tau will be here and 0 minus tau will be here. All right, Kevalish?
Yes, sir.
So if you draw a Mohr circle, here you are having tau and you are having minus tau. So you see this is maximum principal stress and this is called minimum principal stress. Acha, actually I feel some of the stuff will not still be covered the way things are going. So what I will do, I will upload a few lectures and you just listen to the recording. Okay, is it all right, Kevalish?
Yes, sir. It will be all right, sir.
Okay, okay. So you have maximum principal stress, minimum principal stress, and you see these are the planes. This plane will be having maximum principal stress situation, and this plane will be having this is a compressive stress situation. So you can find planes. So this plane is having maximum tensile stress. This is having maximum compressive stress, and they are represented here. So you see these are also separated by 45 degrees. 90-degree separation in Mohr circle, meaning 45-degree separation in actual world. You must have twisted a chalk and seen a failure, how it is failing. Some helical profile is there along which it is failing, and you will find that surface is at 45 degrees to the cross-sectional plane. Maximum shear stress when you are twisting is on the cross-sectional plane. So here, when we say pure shear, so pure shear is on these planes only. On other planes, you can have normal stress. Here you are having normal stress. Here you are having normal stress. So only for this element, you will say tau xy is 0. Tau xy, sigma xx and sigma yy are 0. While tau xy is non-zero. So you have defined certain directions. For them, you are saying pure shear. If you have taken some other direction, as you know, through any point, this is all information, stress information on planes passing through a point. On a plane, you can, on a point, through a point, you can pass infinite number of planes. So when you talk of state of stress, you give stress information on 3 perpendicular planes passing through that point. So we are everywhere in Mohr circle dealing with stresses only on planes passing through a given point. It's all being done for one single point. What are the stresses on different planes passing through different points? So suppose it's a plane state of stress, there is no stress on z direction. All stress information is given by this circle. Now you know normal stress will not exceed this, shear stress will not exceed this. Different sigma tau combinations are here on this parameter. Each point on the circle represents a plane in the actual world. Some stress information on some plane. Okay. and all those planes are passing through one point only. So you're talking of state of stress at a point. Is it okay? Because many people won't understand this. So now you have, suppose if all kind of stresses are there, then you have got this point as sigma xx, tau xy. This point is sigma yy, tau xy. This sigma xx, sigma yy can be, this may be sigma yy, this may be sigma xx. Depends on their magnitudes. So you can find maximum principal stress, minimum principal stress. Then you can find tau maximum. Tau max is basically radius of the circle. So those formulas are easy to derive. We have already derived the expressions for principal stresses and maximum shear stress. I think that's all to Mohr circle. One more thing is there. There is something called hydrostatic state of stress. Hydrostatic state of stress. You have heard of Pascal's law in fluids. In a stationary fluid, pressure is equally transmitted in all directions. You must have heard this statement. What is the meaning of this statement? You take a point, same pressure in all directions. So meaning is you take a plane, so find force upon area on this plane, take this plane, find force upon area, everywhere same pressure. So how can such a situation happen? You take any 2 points, you take any point. So this plane, the value is pressure. So this I had shown hydrostatic tension. You can have hydrostatic tension as well as compression. Compression you are more familiar. So there the force sign will be opposite. So what is the value of stress on one plane? You will find that it is minus P. Shear stress you will find is zero. Only then you will have such a situation. Every plane you will find so if you are having situation where your both the planes are having going to one point only. So what is the Mohr circle now? Reduces to a point. When you have a hydrostatic state of stress, Mohr circle reduces to a point. It means there is no shear stress. In a stationary liquid, your shear stress is zero. So you have only a normal stress, and it will be same in all directions only when Mohr circle is a point. Otherwise, if Mohr circle is you have a circle kind of a thing, then you cannot have same normal stress at every point. That is not possible. Different points will have different normal stress. So that can happen only when Mohr circle reduces to a point. This is one very important example. So I covered pure shear, I covered uniaxial stress, and I covered the situation of general plane stress. So at times you have triaxial state of stress. So in that case, you are having all three principal stresses. They are non-zero. In plane state of stress, you saw only two principal stresses. Third was zero. Plane state of stress means sigma z is zero. So your third principal stress was zero. Here you are having three principal stresses. So when we draw a Mohr circle, we found there was sigma 1 and sigma 2 we found. Suppose you can draw a Mohr circle involving these two fellows, then you will involving these two fellows. Suppose your third principal stress is this, and another Mohr circle you can draw for the larger one. This way you can kind of talk of handling talking of Moore circle for 3D case, but you cannot find stress at any plane using Moore circle. For that, you have to go to this formula. This I have done. You go back to that lecture and you can do it. For plane state of stress, you can use Moore circle, and also you can derive the formula. Those formulas are given in your books. Or even using Moore circle, you can find geometrically what is the value of stress, normal and shear stress. Look, I have shown you. This is a Moore circle. So you have got some point here. You have got some. This is your sigma xx, sigma xy. This is your sigma yy, sigma xy. So you have to go twice the angle. You have gone twice the angle. And this is your sigma tau. So in the actual world, you have gone angle theta. Suppose this is, so you want to find stresses on this plane. Okay. So you have to go twice the angle and you found normal stress and shear stress. Now you want to find normal stress and shear stress on this plane. So what is the norm? You can talk it like this. You have rotated your coordinate system. Your xy axis has gone to x prime, y prime. Now what is your sigma x prime, x prime? That is the normal stress on this plane, which you are finding here. So this will be your sigma x prime, x prime. And what is the shear stress? Tau y prime, x prime. And if you had gone another, this was theta degree. Now you want to find on this plane. So you have to turn how much? Kavarish, how much you have to turn? Your normal vector will turn how much for reaching this y prime?
Pi by 2 plus theta.
Very good. So you have to go here. You have to turn by another pi in the actual, in the Moore circle. So you have to turn pi by 2 plus theta. So how much is the turning in Moore circle? Twice of this, pi plus 2 theta. So this is 2 theta and plus pi. So you are going to diametrically opposite angle. This sigma tau will be sigma y prime and sigma. Okay. So you will can reach both the points. So you are able to define sigma x prime, sigma x prime, sigma y prime using this Moore circle. All those formulas can be derived. Is it all right? So this can be found by geometry. You see, you know, middle point, you know, radius, you know. You have to just find this angle. R into this cos of this angle will be your sigma. Tau will be whatever is this angle, R into sine of this angle, suppose you call it phi. R sine phi will be tau. So only thing is you have to just find this, what is this phi? And this you can do by geometry easily. Okay, let me give it a try for a minute in case I can do it. It's not difficult, that I know. Now you see, this is R. This angle is phi. This angle is 2 theta. So you see R cos phi plus sigma xx plus sigma yy by 2 is equal to your sigma. Then R sin phi is equal to your tau. So these are what we are interested in finding. Only problem is how to find phi. So you have to look for some another equation which connects phi and theta. So right now I'm not able to think of it. Okay. Okay. Now there was one more thing I wanted to tell you. First we take a simple case. There are some relations epsilon xx is equal to sigma xx by e minus nu by e sigma yy plus sigma zz. These are your, you can call it generalized Hooke's law. And epsilon xy is equal to tau xy by shear modulus. Mu is the shear modulus. And also shear modulus has the expression this is a Poisson's ratio. Okay. So you can write in terms of the principal stresses sigma 1 by E minus nu by E sigma 2 plus sigma 3. These are the principal stresses. Just like sigma xx sigma. So what will be your epsilon 2? Sigma 2 by E minus nu by E sigma 1 plus sigma 3. So your sum of normal stresses. This is a normal strain in one direction. So this way you can do it. Okay. So here you wrote strains in terms of stresses. You were given stresses and you found strains. You can also have strains. You can find stresses. So there is an expression sigma ij is equal to 2 mu epsilon ij plus nu e 1 plus nu 1 minus 2 nu epsilon ll delta ij. So delta ij you already know is equal to 1 if I is equal to j, and epsilon ll means epsilon 1 1 plus epsilon 2 2 plus epsilon 3 3. I already explained you Einstein's notation. So this is like a dummy index. Whenever it repeats, so this is like 2 L's, not a mu. Okay. So this is given like this. So this expression, if you check out, when you did a case of uniaxial load, when you had applied uniaxial load, you did it in 12th standard also. You applied load. So this was your sigma 1, for example. So you had stresses as sigma 1 0 0. These were your principal stresses. So what will be your epsilon 1? Yes, Kailash.
Sir, here it will be sigma 1 by E, yes, sir.
Okay. What will be epsilon 2?
It will be 0, sir. Sorry, due to generalized Hooke's law, yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, if I put this thing here I put sigma 1 is equal to 2 mu epsilon 1 plus nu e 1 plus nu 1 minus 2 nu. Now, what is my epsilon LL? I have to sum all these strains. So sigma 1 by E is common. 1 minus nu minus nu. Is it all right, Kevalish?
Yes, sir.
So what you will find is once you simplify this expression, what you will get? Once you simplify it, this is what you will get. Or you will get sigma 1 is equal to sigma 1. Okay. So you will find that this expression is exact. When is it exact? Any idea, Kevalish? Can you explain? When you are allowing transverse contraction. You applied a uniaxial load, but you did not prevent transverse contraction. Your bar was contracting in transverse, both the transverse directions. In that case, this is an exact statement. We are not making any simplification, any approximation. It looks like an approximate statement. But you see, I have used fully this statement for calculating it. You see, I found epsilon 1, epsilon 2, epsilon 3 in this manner. But had I used from strains, I would have got the same answer. Okay. You just check out this expression, then you will realize the importance of what I am writing. Then there is one more problem we usually do about bulk modulus. You see, for a isotropic material, there are only two elastic constants that are needed, E and nu. There is another generalized Hooke's law which I have not shown you.Cijkl epsilon kl. So this is the more popularly known as generalized Hooke's law for an anisotropic material. So how many terms are there in this tensor? This is known as elasticity tensor. How many terms are there, Kevilish? You see
Also
IJK.
nine terms.
No, this has got 81 terms. You
Oh,
see, each index can have value 1 to 3. So 3 into 3 into 3 into 3. 3 raised to the power 4. So many terms are there. When this is a symmetric matrix, you see, this is a symmetric matrix. This is a symmetric tensor. So this also will be symmetric. And you will see your terms become 36 because of symmetry. Independent terms are 36. There are further symmetry conditions, and you will come to know they become 21. So for an anisotropic material, you will have 21 terms. Suppose the material is orthotropic. There are certain conditions, orthotropic. You Google it out. Transversely elastic. Transversely isotropic. So these is reduced to 3. D is reduced to 5, and fully isotropic, you will realize that there are only two independent terms, which you can say are E and nu, which we have already used. So they can describe stress strain relations, okay, for an elastic material. So how do you find bulk modulus? So you don't need special value for bulk modulus or shear modulus. Shear modulus, I already told you, is equal to E upon 1 plus 2 into 1 plus nu. And similarly, bulk modulus is E upon, we can drive it. Okay, let's drive it. So you're applying some pressure, suppose you apply pressure on all sides. So you applied pressure, hydrostatic pressure on this cable. Hello? Yes. अच्छा अच्छा, नमस्कार, कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशंस। ठीक है, जरूर आएंगे। हाँ हाँ, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, थैंक यू। ओके ओके, थैंक यू, बाय। So what is your epsilon 1? Your stress is P, all right? And there will be transverse contraction because of this. There is a compressive stress, so there will be transverse stretching. So what is your epsilon 1? All right. Similarly, you will have epsilon 2 and epsilon 3 of the same value. And there is something called volumetric strain. And that is sum of these three normal strains. I will also explain it. So you will get a value 3p by E, 2 nu minus 1. Okay. So this is your volumetric strain. So what is your bulk modulus? Call it B or K. Pressure upon volumetric strain. So you see pressure is a negative stress. Call it minus P. And what is the volumetric strain? So this will also cause a contraction in the volume. So I put a minus sign. So this becomes your K value. So this is equal to E upon. So this is the bulk modulus of the material. So this is what resists the change in volume. And similarly, you can get shear modulus. How do you get shear modulus? So for that, you have to apply shear stress. You see, if you just apply shear stress on this face, you are having a problem here. You are not satisfying movement equilibrium. That's violated. For force equilibrium, you have to ensure that there has to be force here. Suppose you fix it, then there has to be a force here. counter it. That will be shear stress. So you see, you are violating an equilibrium situation. So it is advised to have like this. In that case, you are not violating equilibrium here at the corners. So this situation is handled differently. So this is called pure shear situation. Now I had explained you that there will be a principal stress in this direction and a compressive stress in this direction. So if you draw its more circle, so tau 0, sorry, 0 minus tau, 0 tau. So here you are having tau 0 and minus tau 0. So you are having two principal stresses, tau and minus tau. Now you can find stretching in this direction. So this is your diagonal. Suppose you take both of them of same length. So your diagonal becomes root 2. So what is the stretching in this direction? What is the strain in this direction? Let's call it direction 1, direction 2. What is strain in direction 1? Tau by E plus nu by E, sorry, minus nu by E, and your stress is minus tau. So this is a strain in direction 1. Similarly, what is the strain in direction 2? You're compressing it, minus tau by E, minus nu by E, tau. So you got strains in both the directions. So your epsilon 1 becomes 1 by E tau 1 plus nu, and epsilon 2 becomes tau by E so you get your epsilon 1 and epsilon 2. So what happens? So your target is to find the change in angle. If you find the change in angle from 90 degrees, whatever is the change from 90 degree, if you find that angle which is called gamma, then gamma is equal to tau by shear modulus, and you get the value of shear modulus. From these epsilon 1 and epsilon 2, you find this change in angle, or you call it gamma, change in angle from 90 degrees, and from that you will be able to calculate your shear modulus. So this is the way you go ahead to find shear modulus. So what I will do is I will upload it when I do, I'll upload 1 or 2 lectures, and you can look at them later on. One more thing I wanted to tell you. No, I did not do the distributed load in a beam. Suppose you have a cantilever and you have a distributed load. So your load is W, Newton per meter. So when are we going to have the exam? Kevalish, did you decide a date in consultation with others?
Yes, sir, we are actually this week we are also having a lot of exams, so
But we have to do somewhere in the next week. Can we do it on 23rd?
sir, I will let you know as soon as possible within today, sir, because I'll just discuss it with my classmates, sir,
Oh,
first.
okay, no problem. And also any class where you will do a presentation on
I will also
lens.
I will also discuss it with my classmates, sir. We will be
Okay,
preparing presentation.
okay. So now I'll just tell you how do you find shear force and bending moment diagram for this. So now you see here, you take a section at a position X. First, we can find our reactions. That is the first thing to do. So this length is L. So reaction here has to be W into L to balance the vertical force. Total force here you can say is like W into L. Now you can say this entire force distributed, since it is uniformly distributed, you can assume that it is acting at the centroid of this body. So this is WL. So what is the movement caused by this force? This couple WL into L by 2. So this is a clockwise couple, clockwise movement. So here there has to be a counterclockwise movement exerted by the support. So WL square by 2. So this is your free body diagram of the entire cantilever. Now you have taken a cross section here. In this case, what you can do, you can take the right hand side and this distance is X. So this is applying, this length is L minus X. So you can assume this is W into L minus X, applying at the middle of it. Any problem with this? This distance is L minus X. So the total force, external force on this right half is the right half is W into L minus X, and this applies at a distance L minus X by 2 from here. So if I show shear force and bending moment, it has to be like this. These are the positive directions of shear force and bending moment, as it is a negative phase. So this is a negative phase. Do you have any class at 12? Kevalish.
Sir, at 1.
Oh, sorry, 1.
Sir, we have a Viva of our group 2.
Okay, no, not
Of
an issue.
EMML.
I'll wind up at 1.
Okay.
So you see now here, you can find shear force minus V, and this entire force is minus W into L minus X. This has to be 0. So implies V is equal to W into X minus L. Now similarly, you can take movement about this point. So V will not contribute. This is a clockwise movement, so minus M. And this force will create a clockwise movement minus W into L minus X at a distance L minus X by 2. This should be equal to 0. So what do you get? M is equal to minus W L minus X square by 2. So at any position X, you are having this is the expression. If you plot it, so what you are getting at X equal to 0? What is the value of movement at X equal to 0? M is equal to minus WL square by 2. What is the value of shear force at X equal to 0? Put minus WL. What was your boundary conditions we had found? Reactions. You see, reaction was here. WL upwards. So it was a negative shear force because area normal is negative. This was counterclockwise. So again, bending moment was negative minus WL square by 2. So you're getting the same results by these expressions. So you can plot them. So your shear force is this Wx minus L. So at x equal to 0, you have got minus WL. At x equal, you are having 0. So this is a shear force diagram. And what is the bending moment diagram? This is the expression. So you are having somewhere minus WL square by 2. At x is equal to L, you are having a 0. Now, how will this curve look like? You have to plot this curve. You see, this curve is a shifted curve. At x is equal to L, you are having a 0. So you have to plot it. Right now, I am running out of time. Okay. What more I want to tell you? Okay, one more thing I wanted to tell you, which I have not done so far, which is important. Suppose you have a force Q here, and you show shear force, positive shear force is V plus dV here. Here you show this is V. Okay. So this is my counterclockwise movement, M plus dm. This is my clockwise movement, M. Now you have to do force equilibrium of this object. So this length is dx. So if you do force balance, sigma Fy, V plus dV minus V plus Q dx. If you do sigma Mz, M plus dm minus M, and this Q you see is acting up vertically, Q dx at distance dx by 2, equivalent force. If you replace it by an equivalent force, so this is causing a clockwise movement about this point. So clockwise movement means minus Q dx into dx by 2, and there is a shear force here V, which is causing a counterclockwise movement about this point. You see, plus V dx. V plus dV is passing through it, so it is not contributing. So this entire thing has to be 0. So you look at the first equation. So dV is equal to minus Q. dV by dx is equal to minus Q. And if you look at this equation, dm, this term is having twice dx square, so you can neglect it. So dm is by dx is equal to minus V. So these are the two results which you get. Now we did this problem. There was a force Q here. So you see what is your Q? So your shear force was coming like this. This was the shear force diagram. So you see what is the dV by dx here of the shear force? I say it is minus Q. And you see here, this Q is negative. So you are having a positive answer. And you see shear force slope is positive here. Can you see this? Kevalish. Now
Yes, sir.
you see about dm by dx. Dm by dx is minus V. So it is, the shear force here everywhere was positive. Sorry, was negative. So this dm by dx is always positive. Okay. So where I was drawing this graph. So you will see that dm by dx will always keep increasing. Whenever you draw any shear force bending moment diagram, you will be able to observe these, how you will be able to plot using these equations. So I think I should call it a day. I will put it in my recorded lecture. Okay. The class is over.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, can you please allow the students to complete the MT project in the group of two, sir, because the time is short and we can easily